Hello, everybody. Welcome by a new episode of Follow Your Passion podcast. Let me introduce my guest of today. His name is Dominik Messiaen. Dominik is a very versatile person. He calls himself the Charming Hypnotist, and that immediately caught my attention because I'm a hypnotherapist myself. But just like myself, he didn't start out like that. After getting his master's degree in applied linguistics, he started his quest for his artistic identity. He followed numerous courses and masterclasses from dancing to magic to ventriloquism, and he ended up doing a professional theater education. When the police contacted him to give him a pickpocket demonstration, Dominik contacted the German expert Christian Lindemann. After learning all the tricks, Dominik created his own techniques over the years and became an expert himself. During a pickpocket gathering, he witnessed a hypnosis act and he became intrigued by that. And after a hypnotherapist released him from migraine attacks, he followed the hypnotherapy training himself. But he didn't pursue that direction. He just wanted to have his shows. And he started integrating hypnosis in his shows. And after the shows, he helped some clients with hypnotherapy as well. But the request came, and after he forwarded those requests to colleagues, he decided to add his value as well and do the hypnotherapy as well. So I'm not even sure how to call his profession because he's so versatile. I would say he's truly authentic, and I would like to welcome him in my show. Welcome, Dominik.
Thank you, Edwin, and thank you for the nice introduction.
Yeah. So, Dominik, I was raised with, do your best at school, get a degree, and get a job. I guess it were quite similar with that, wouldn't you say?
It was quite similar. My both parents were in education, so they thought the same way, and that's why I first studied too. I studied languages, and but during my studies, I knew already I wanted to do something in the performing arts. I was already interested in magic, circus, dancing as a kid, and then I knew my interest for magic was already very big at that stage.
Nice. And you decided to follow your
yes,
passion,
indeed.
actually, because you were already intrigued by it, right?
Yes, indeed. So I decided to work only part-time. I didn't do something with languages because that was hard to do part-time there. And during a few years, 4 years, I did that, working part-time with a day job. And during the weekends, I developed my act. I did shows. And after a few years, I had enough shows to quit the day job. And at that time, I worked in magic, and I was working very broadly. So I started with a kid magic show. I did a close-up act, and after a few years, I started to develop also a comedy stage magic act. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I had a mentor who was a ventriloquist, and he worked a lot with comedy, and he learned me a lot about structuring the show right, about how making, how to insert comedy in the act. So that was a big help, and that way everything went pretty fast, but I was not very specialized. And it was only when I was about 35 years old that when I met my another mentor and coach, Luc Apers, who is a very good magician who mixes magic and theater, and he plays a lot in theater halls in France. And that was also the first time that I made a very important mental shift, mindset shift. Because before I lacked a bit of self-confidence. That was because of my education. My self-confidence was pretty low. And that made that I had the conviction that I could perform well, but that the creation of tricks and the creation of a good act, that was something for other people to do. So there are magicians who create tricks and publish them in books, in DVDs, and or sell the tricks. Mm-hmm. And that was what I was doing. And most magicians work like that. But the Kapers, he challenged me. He challenged me to start from scratch. And he said, no, you don't do that. You will develop something yourself. And at the start, it was, wow, I thought, no, this won't work. I can't. I lacked confidence. But then after a few days, I started doing it, and I saw it worked. So that was very important for me. And I wish I would have had Luc or something like someone like you who could have showed me that earlier, who could have opened my eyes earlier, because I would have won a lot of time, and I would have been good or very good earlier, because I was good at performing before, and I was not very original. I wasn't the real artist. And so there I learned a lot. And that Luc Apers also mentioned at that time, but I didn't do anything with it for the moment. At that time, he also mentioned that maybe pickpocketing would be a good specialization for me, because I am easy in approaching people. I can touch people easily without feeling uncomfortable, which is important for pickpocketing. I use a lot of humor, so if something doesn't work out well, they don't give me a big slam. So yeah, at that moment I didn't do anything with it, but and then later when I did a show for a big audience, there was a policeman. I stole his watch from him, but I didn't know he was a policeman. But he said afterwards, he said, I work for the police.
Well, but probably the moment you got his handcuffs, it would have caught your attention.
Yes. And he said, I want your business card. And I said, because we need people like you at the police station, because we don't know exactly how pickpockets work on the street. But I told him, yes, I can steal a watch, but I do it while doing magic, and I can't do real pickpocketing. But he said, nevertheless, give me your card. And a few years later, he called me. And I said, again, the same thing. I said, I'm a magician who can steal a watch, but I'm not a pickpocket. But he challenged me again. He said, I really would appreciate if you would try. And then I said, okay, let's put a deadline, which is very important, 2 deadlines, I think. I said, okay, let's fix a date. That was 3 or 4 months later. And I went, as you mentioned in the introduction, I went to Christian Lindemann in Germany, who does a pickpocket act in the Cusa show of Cirque du Soleil. He taught me his techniques. I studied them, and I did that show. It was not really a show. I did a demonstration, a pickpocket demonstration, just calling up 2 people, just stealing everything they had, tie inclusive, belt inclusive, everything they had. Now, I must say, it was stressful. It was the first time in my life that I did a demonstration without any props. I didn't have a magic trick. I didn't have anything to fall back on. It were all people who knew they came to a pickpocket demonstration. So they made my life hard, but it worked out well. And from there on, I did more demonstrations for the police, learning in difficult situations, because it's not always easy. People don't always come to such a demonstration well dressed with a tie and a costume, and which is the best situation for a pickpocket, because then a lot of pickpockets and good things. But that way I learned, it was a hard way, but I really learned it very well that way. And that was also the time that I made a second mental shift, that my mindset changed for the second time, because I always was very perfectionist. And that delayed my action, because every time I wanted it to be perfect before I dared to put it in a show. Yeah. That's not good. If you do that as a pickpocket, you never start for the first time, because you're never sure you mastered the skill. Yeah. You can just try on a puppet, but the puppet doesn't give feedback. You can't adapt your timing. You can put everything in the same pockets every time, but in real situations, people have several kinds of dresses, pockets, they behave differently. So yeah, you have to just do it. And that's what I did. And at that time, I read a very good book that I can recommend to other people who are not in show business too. And that's The Professional Opportunist Wrongless Approach is the name of the book. And The Professional Opportunist, that's the name, the artist name of James Brown. That's a UK pickpocket and hypnotist. And wrongless approach just means that you can't go wrong. Whatever you do, you shouldn't do stupid things, of course, not just rob the bank, but you know what I mean. If you think about the options and with the information you have at that moment, you make a decision and you take action, you shouldn't blame yourself afterwards.
Yeah.
There are only two possibilities. Or it works the way you want, and then it's good, and you continue the same way. Or it doesn't completely work the way you want, and you adapt, in my case, the timing, for instance, a bit, or I look for another technique, or I look for another way to approach the people to get in the intimate circle. And that changes everything, because you don't think anymore in terms of failure. Because sometimes people ask me, don't you have it ever that somebody feels you steal their watch? Of course, if I do 1,000 watch steals, on 1,000 watch steals, I have maybe 5 times that someone feels it for whatever reason. Maybe I'm tired, maybe I didn't, I made a mistake. That happens, but that's not bad. 900
No, exactly.
times that you steal it without anyone feeling it, and I steal every watch. I don't go out of the way of any watch, because I want to know how to do it, so I go for every watch.
Yeah, and in the case it fails, it's a learning experience, right?
Yeah, as long as you don't make the same failure twice, it's perfect.
Exactly. And it also, because you said, that you're a perfectionist, at least you were. Yeah. And it already showed when you said that you didn't want to do the pickpocket demonstration with the police.
Yeah.
And the thing that came to mind was, in the land of the blind, one eye is king. And you wanted to have 2 eyes in order to perform, right?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
And you just needed to be 1 step ahead of the rest to be the specialist.
Yeah. And there is a saying that says, continuous improvement is better than delayed action. And it's true. I see people around me who are very talented, but who don't do anything because they're paralyzed by the idea of perfection. And I'm still a perfectionist. If I do something, I want it to be very good, but I do things. I force myself. Now it's doesn't feel anymore like forcing, but in the beginning it was.
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense, because if you just look at the business world, if you would only bring out perfect things, there wouldn't be any Windows or Apple.
No, indeed.
Right?
They do updates too, and they.
And we've totally accept that. So why would it be different in any other branch?
Indeed. Yeah.
And since we're both hypnotherapists as well, I have a lot of conversations with clients, with colleagues, with friends, with other entrepreneurs, and there's still a lot of presuppositions about hypnosis. The people think they are not in control, stuff like that, and I guess that has been a struggle in your career as well, right?
Indeed, for show hypnosis, that's terrible, because and that's because of what most show hypnotists do. They only put people asleep, show that people fall on the ground, on the floor. That's not the kind of things I want to do, but it's very difficult to persuade theater bookers, that I do something different. And the perception is indeed what you told. They think it's being out of control, it's making people silly. And it's a big problem I encountered the past 2 years, because I wanted to do my theater show. I also used to direct it to really make a theater show. It's not a hypnosis show anymore. It's with hypnosis, but it's real theater. And I wanted to play it in good theater circumstances. So not only for corporate shows, because corporate shows, that people come and they want to eat and drink, and they don't want to have an hour looking at a hypnotist. A lot of people don't want it, don't believe in it, aren't interested. So I didn't want that. I wanted to do a good show in good circumstances, good lighting, good sound, everything perfect, or as perfect as possible. But as I contacted bookers in Belgium and in Holland, I always got the same answer. We don't want that because, and in the 80s, there was also a small scandal with Rusty Rostelli. It's a well-known Dutch hypnotist who has not a very good reputation. And at that time, there was a story with two girls who afterwards were murdered, and they just before they went to the hypnosis show. Now, of course, there's no connection because once they're out of hypnosis, when the focus is broken, they're out of hypnosis and it has nothing to do anymore. But because he had already a very bad reputation, that didn't help the perception of the people, of course. And when I got the answer no, I could do two things. I could say, damn, why does that happen to me? And I leave my dream and finished. But that's not what I did. I told myself, how can I solve this? How can I solve this? And then I thought, okay, if they don't want me to book in theaters, I just go to the theaters myself. I rent the hall and I do forewalling. Forewalling is American you rent the hall yourself and you do everything yourself. The ticketing, the marketing, you provide the staff. So everything you do yourself, but the income is for yourself too, but all the cost and the risk is for you too. Yeah. So that's what I did the last year. I did it in small theater halls. I tried a few things. I had two people who helped me for the marketing, but they weren't. Afterwards, I realized it was not the right choice. They were not specialized enough in internet marketing and event marketing. So after a few months, I decided to choose another team, another marketing team with whom I work now. And that works very well now. It's a Dutch marketing, by the way. And they do it very well. And I steer them and we try out several channels, like you have Meta, Instagram and Facebook, but YouTube and other channels. We try the different channels. We measure everything from A to Z, and then we can fine tune. And after a while, we know what works best and we can spend the budget on the right channel, or I choose the right timing for which channel works best at what stage of the marketing. And that works well. We're doing a few small theater halls before Christmas. And then after Christmas, we're stepping up to bigger theater halls. So of 200, 300, even 400 people.
Nice.
And, I dream bigger afterwards.
Oh yeah, of course. And are you still doing everything yourself, or are the bookers already getting interest in the show?
For the moment, I do it still myself. Because the idea behind it is I first want to prove that I can fill the theater halls.
Yeah.
And then I want to invite them so they see I can fill theater halls of 300, 400 people. But because finally what interests the bookers is that they don't take too much risk. And if I can fill the halls, they can certainly, because they have their connections, they have their network. The only thing they should do is go to the right theaters and say, okay, we have a good act that fills the theater halls, we're sure. And then if I can use then I'm also on the website of the theater, then I'm also in the newsletter of the theater, then the tickets will already sell themselves for a big deal.
Yeah.
Then I can add a bit of my marketing I do now, but maybe 50%, and then we fill the theater halls. And there's no problem for me for just continuing to do that, because once I installed the system and the system works and we refine it a bit, I want to do it. That's no problem. But perfect. I want the bookers to do the organizational part, looking for the dates, looking for the theater halls, signing the contracts, looking for the staff, that kind of things, because that takes a lot of time, and
I can imagine. But it also shows that you've got a great entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah, of course.
And as I understood it correctly, you didn't get that from your parents, right?
No. They worked in education, so they had a job and they were simply paid. Certainly, my father was a very smart man, and he has that entrepreneurial spirit. He has because he had also a computer business where he bought computers, used computers, and made them better, and then resold them. So he has that spirit. He has himself too. Yeah.
Nice. And how did you find your entrepreneurial journey until now?
I find it very exciting because there were 2 periods I worked in education myself. So I taught French and German, and that's not for me. I like to teach. I like the students, but what I don't like is the system that it's so rigid. You have to do it that way, and they don't look for the results. I had very good results with my students, but I didn't want to follow completely the path because in some ways it was nonsense. It was not the best path to achieve the best results.
Yeah.
And yeah, I like to do my own thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
And like you said, with hypnotherapy and hypnosis, there are a lot of presuppositions. I've my clients also have used the name of Rasterstelling a lot, but it's so much more than only stage hypnosis, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Do you mean technically, or in which sense do you mean?
Well, it's I sometimes I say that people think that hypnotherapy is scary, and threatening, but a guided meditation after a yoga class is normal business, right?
Yeah. And dreaming is a normal business.
Exactly. So please explain the difference to me. Right?
Yeah.
A guided meditation can also be a hypnotherapy session. It all depends on the intent that you start the meditation with. Visualization techniques.
Yeah.
Conversational hypnosis is also part of it. So it's much broader than what people think it is.
Yeah, and in my hypnosis, I also always adapt my approach to the people. On stage, it's a bit more difficult, of course, because you're hypnotizing a few people in the same moment. But if I did it, so that's the way I learned it, in incorporating it in my walk around pickpocket act. So that was on corporate cocktail parties, dinners, receptions, where there are a lot of people running around, talking, there is music. And I went just to a group of 4 or 5 people, and I told them I've been asked to show how hypnosis works. And I just did the hypnosis. And other hypnotists who heard it and who saw it said, how do you do that? How do you dare it? And how do you do it? The percentage in their mind, there is only a small percentage of the people who can go into hypnosis, but that's nonsense, of course. So most of the time it works.
Yeah.
But there I learned that's of course hard to do because as I said, the circumstances are not ideal. It's not like in hypnotherapy where it's silent and people are relaxed and they come because they want to come and they have a problem, so they want to believe in what you do. And there I learned a lot because you have like you say, the conversational hypnosis. You have the hypnosis without trance. That's where you don't have the eyes closed, for instance. If you feel that somebody is resistant or reluctant to close the eyes, it doesn't make sense to say sleep because it won't work.
Yeah,
it won't work. They're anxious. They will block. So there you have to work in a different way, the conversational way, or the hypnosis without trance way that James Tripp teaches. Or if somebody is very soft and wouldn't react well on dominance, then you shouldn't take that dominant approach. But for other people, it's necessary because they want that. They want to be ruled and they want that here. And so, I learned to be very flexible and to adapt it. And on stage too, sometimes it goes, if I have a big theater hall, it's a lot easier because if there are 400 people, it's not difficult to have 5 or 6 people that go into deep hypnosis, and I can weed out the rest and I keep the best people and it's finished. But if I do it sometimes, certainly at the beginning, I did it maybe for a group of 30 or 40 people. And in July, I did it also for a group of 40 people. And I did a very, very good show. That was when at the Gentse Feesten, it's a big festival in Ghent. I played my show, but normally there in the theater shows come only the people who the day before go to the side of the Hense Feesten. They look, oh, what is there? I want to go and let's see if there is a nice theater act. Oh, this one I will book. So they don't book a long time in advance normally, but it was just the week that it was so extremely hot. And the day I had to perform, it was 40 or 42 degrees.
Oh.
So there was nobody in Ghent, and people knew it a few days in advance. So there was no one booking just before the show. So I had only my pre-sold tickets. That was 40 or 42 people. And there I had to fall back on what I could do and work more personally on the people. And then I do a great show, but it was harder work. The start of the show is harder because then it's the depth and
I can imagine, but it's also beautiful what you say, that you have so many tools that you can just use what seems applicable at the moment, because you're working with people and you need to adapt yourself, because there's not a one tool fits all. Right?
No. And that's why many hypnotists and also many lay people think that only a certain percentage of people can go into hypnosis. It's because they only use one tool. And if you always use the same tool, that will only work for a certain percentage of people.
Yeah, exactly. And I always say that people want to change, but not to be changed. Yeah. So if a person wants the change, it will work.
Yeah.
Right. I was still, when I started my training, I started working with volunteers, because my trainer said, if you're serious about it, you have to start working with people. So during my education, during my training, I started working with volunteers. And there was this man that came to me for a session. And we had a very good pre-talk. I knew what his issue was and what he wanted. And when I sat him in the chair and wanted to start the session, he said, I'm not sure if I'm easy to hypnotize, because he had been on stage with Russell Estelli 3 times to quit smoking, and it didn't work. Yeah. And even though we're still in training, I had no doubt whatsoever. I said, yeah, but we just had a great pre-talk. And I know you want this is going to work. And he went very easily into a deep trance, worked with him. One session was only needed, and he was transformed for the rest of his life. So
and that's also because you know your skills and you believe in your own skills, and that's extremely important. I read there are studies about therapy, different therapies like cognitive therapy, and you have all kinds of therapy, and they compared them. And finally, they decided, well, there isn't a lot of differences between all those therapies on the success level. The success level depends on the person who does the therapy and on the rapport between the hypnotist or the therapist and the client. That's extremely important. It's maybe 70, 80 or 90% of the success level is determined by that. And that's also the reason why in the future I want to do more hypnotherapy myself, because I did hypnotherapy for friends and family, and sometimes for people who were in the show and who were on stage, because they were already in deep hypnosis. There is the rapport, they believe in my skills. For them, I do it, but till now I did it for free. So the hypnotherapy I didn't do as a therapist, where I try to find people who want help. But in the future, when I have more time, I want to do that on a more structured basis. I want to have a praxis for hypnotherapy, because the hardest work is done. If people have seen me in the show, they have trusted my skill, the rapport is built, they come to me because they know I can help them. And that's the biggest deal, or the biggest part of the work. And the change work in itself is maybe 5-10 minutes. I've been how do you say it? I had a severe migraine. Frederick Jacquin, I followed his arrow technique masterclass, and at the end of the day, I had an attack, a migraine attack, and he cured me in maybe 5-10 minutes, because the rapport was already there. I was very focused all day long. So it was easy to have me in hypnosis. I was completely conscious. It was not that I was away or asleep, and it worked. So the change work in itself is only a few minutes, and it's done. It's the work before to get people in the right mindset, in the right, that they trust you, that they let go, that they focus, that they follow the visualization, and then So,
and it reminds me of something that my mentor shared with us during the training, that he asked me, or not me, but another student, do you charge your friends and family if you're doing a session? And he responded, no, of course not. They're friends and family. Why would you charge them? And then he asked this question, do you know this feeling that after a session, well, if we help the client and the client is very happy, he's transformed, he or she, and she feels wonderful. And that feeling inside of you that you get when your session is success, and you saw his eyes glinting, and it's, that's wonderful, right?
Yeah.
So, and then he asked the question, why are you denying your friends and family to get the same feeling?
Yeah.
And he got confused. He said, what do you mean? He said, well, if you're not charging them, you're taking that feeling, that moment from them. Because you're giving something that gives you a good feeling, but you don't want anything in return for that.
Yeah, it's like, right? Of course, indeed.
Yeah, it's like you're creating an IOU for them, right? You're giving something and you don't want anything in return. So they might feel guilty or ashamed that they got something and they have nothing to give you in return. So if you charge them, you enable them to give you something in return, which will give them a good feeling as well. It was very interesting to hear that during the training.
But I think you're right. For the people who were on stage and who did I stayed there the whole during the whole show. Of course, for them, I see it like they made my show, and I say it in my show too. At the end, I say I hope I made a little bit more clear what hypnosis is. And as you might realize, I say to the audience, I'm not hypnotizing those people. I help them to be hypnotized or to experience hypnosis. And it's my skill to make their subconscious, strong enough so they can do what they do here, and so they shine here on stage. And I give them all the credit because it's also the way I feel it. And
definitely.
Because most hypnotists do it the inverse way. They're the big hypnotist, and the people are just objects, and they play around with them, fool with them, and that's
there's no show without the audience, right?
They make the show, and if you do it in respectfully, it's so much better. It's so much better.
Definitely.
Also for the audience, because they think, if I would be at their place and the hypnotist is doing silly things with the people on stage, part of the audience won't like that.
You talked at the beginning, you talked about a few mind shifts you got yourself, and I was wondering about one specific mindset shift, or maybe it didn't appear to you, but I recognize with my clients as well. When you're on stage, especially if you compare the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey to and now, did you play a role, or were you fully your authentic self?
Most of the time, 90% of the time, I was just myself, my authentic self. I experienced with playing another character, but that didn't work out well. I tried it out. At a certain moment, I wanted to do street act as a kind of Alibaba figure. I was Ali Rara then, and I had made a street act around it. And I did a masterclass with Jeff McBride. That's a very big name in magic in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me, Dominik, why are you doing that? He said, you're humorous, you're approachable, people like you are. Just do your thing like you do normally. Because he saw me during the day, that was a few days, the masterclass. So he saw me in between two, during the meals, during the intermissions. And he told me, drop it. I had made a costume, I had made a complete act, and I had completely dropped it. And I think I don't know when again, but there, yeah, I tried it twice. That was then, and another time I tried it again. And yeah, no, I must be myself, my authentic self. What doesn't mean I'm a big thief and a cheat in real life. But I mean that the persona is who I am. On stage, I'm the man I'm in life. I like to help people. I like to make people laugh. I like to make people have a good time. And the tool I use, whether it is magic, whether it is pickpocketing, whether it is hypnosis, maybe next year I sing. I hope I don't.
Yeah, but that's also important, that especially also in entrepreneurship, is that if you're playing a role, you I dare to bet you won't succeed, because people will know that you're playing a role and it's not authentic. You're not connecting with people.
Yeah.
And it's if you're truly yourself, your authentic self, people will like you and come to you because of who you are and not the role you're playing.
Yes.
Right? Of course, there's some expectations about what to expect if they come to a show. People want to be entertained, and that's different when they come to Dominik the hypnotherapist, when they want to be helped, right? But those are just two different roles you're playing as part of your whole identity, because you still want to
persona.
Exactly, you want to help people, you want to inspire them, and your show is one way of doing that, and hypnotherapy is another way of doing that.
Yeah, indeed. And if you're authentic, it's very easy to be congruent and to be consistent.
Exactly.
You play a role, and sometimes you see that with artists. They play a role on stage, they're nice, they come off stage and they're bad to people. People want a signature, they don't want to give it, they want to talk to them, and you feel that. I have had that with certain artists, that I feel, you're ready with working, and they go and they forget the audience, and they want to talk with the people. What I do now, sometimes it's bad too, because it's not good for my health. But after my shows, I normally go in the cafe or in the foyer, and I go and talk with people and ask them how they experienced it. And I go to the people who were in hypnosis, also just to check, are you okay, and how did you find it, and how did you like it? And people feel that people appreciate that I show interest in them afterwards too. That it's not just my show, packing my things and going. And that's what I do and who I am. And
Perfect. So Dominik, I'm afraid we can talk for hours on hypnosis, mindset, entrepreneurship. You know how it goes. If there's any tip, a little piece of wisdom that you would like to share with the audience, what would it be?
Well, from my own experience, first big tip is dream big. Don't dream small, because if you fall short of your dream, almost nothing is left. But if you dream big, in my case, for instance, for my shows, if I dream from big theater halls of 1,000 and more people. And if I fall short and it are only 800 people in my theater hall, it's still not bad. If I would think of 30 people in my theater hall and I fall short, then there are maybe 10 or 20 people, and then it's not really great.
Yeah.
It's also, I think, very important, and that has to do with hypnosis and visualization, what you told before too, and what you also use in your work as a mindset coach, is that it's important to make it very concrete and tangible in your mind. So to picture it really out, that you see the colors, that you see the whole, that or whatever you want to achieve. If you want to run a marathon, that you imagine how it feels when you come over the end line, that you see the people who are supporting you, that you that you make it concrete. I think that is important. And if you have a dream that may last a few years, for instance, in my case, I know that it will take a few years before I can play in the real big theater halls, then it's important to have also deadlines on short term, because that pushes you to take action. And in my case, part of the deadlines, or a big part, are the shows, but as an entrepreneur, you can have other targets that you say, I want to do this, or I want to launch that product, and then you must have a deadline. Then you know, okay, on that day I will finish it, and that pushes you to action. Maybe one thing that might be interesting too is to think flexibly and to not think in terms of why. If you have something that goes wrong, or something that, like in my case, bookers don't want to book a hypnosis show, I could say, why does that happen to me? And I could whine and complain, but that isn't the case. But you should think in terms of how can I solve this? How can I make that this doesn't happen again? So I think thinking in how is important too.
Oh, wonderful advice, Dominik. And you couldn't stay with one, could you?
No. I tried to keep it short.
Exactly. So if people want to know more about you, or get in touch with you, or maybe even visit your show, attend your show, how can you do that?
Well, the easiest way is to go on my website. That's charminghypnotist.com. So charminghypnotist.com, one word. And there you can also find the social media channels I'm on. So I'm on YouTube. You can find me also under the name Charming Hypnotist. On TikTok, I sometimes post, on Instagram, on Facebook, LinkedIn. So, but the channels are there, so they can easily make connection there.
Perfect. Charminghypnotist.com. So there's already some international ambition, I would say, with such a name.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I work also in English. I did the workshops also in French, and maybe, who knows, later on I do it in German too.
So. Who knows? Well, I know you've already been on national television, right? You got your first appearance there. And who knows, maybe once you've booked the O2 Dome in the UK, I'll visit you as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Alan.
Okay, well, Dominik, it was a real pleasure having you in the show. I really loved the conversation and the energy. We're connected, so we'll definitely stay in touch. And thanks again for attending.
Thank you for the invitation. Bye.